In 2007, a technological ripple became a tidal wave with the unveiling of the iPhone. It wasn't just a new gadget, it was a paradigm shift, fundamentally altering how humanity interacted with information, each other, and the world. But what if this revolution died at birth? What if critical flaws, an astronomical price, or an unprepared network infrastructure condemned the iPhone to obscurity, relegating it to a mere footnote in Apple's otherwise illustrious history? This alternate 2025 paints a fascinating, almost anachronistic picture of a world where the smartphone era never ignited, and the pervasive digital landscape we now take for granted remains a distant dream. The immediate fallout of a failed iPhone would be immense for Apple. Having poured vast resources into its development, the company would suffer a massive financial hit and a severe blow to its reputation. Its trajectory would pivot back to its established strengths, Macs and iPods, never becoming the mobile behemoth it is today. Humiliated by a colossal misstep, Apple might retreat from cutting-edge innovation, focusing on incremental improvements to existing product lines. This setback wouldn't be confined to Apple Park. The financial world, particularly venture capital, would view the mobile space with extreme caution. Instead of pouring billions into nascent mobile-first startups, investors would redirect their capital towards safer bets, enterprise software, desktop computing, and traditional web services. The dynamism that came to define Silicon Valley in the late 2000s and 2010s, the rapid proliferation of application development, the relentless pursuit of portable innovation, would simply not materialize. The very notion of a mobile-first strategy would be an oxymoron, a quaint, perhaps even ridiculed, concept, stifling an entire generation of digital entrepreneurship and fundamentally altering the growth trajectory of the tech industry. Innovation would occur, but it would be fragmented, less consumer-centric, and certainly less globally pervasive. The ripple effects would extend to education, too, with computer science programs remaining largely focused on traditional software development rather than emerging mobile platforms. The global tech job market would look starkly different, lacking the vast ecosystem of mobile developers, UX designers, and digital marketers we know today. Without the iPhone's catalyst, the concept of a unified smartphone market might never ignite. Dominant 2007 companies like Nokia, BlackBerry, and Motorola wouldn't face an existential threat. Instead, they would continue their incremental improvements on feature phones, better cameras, more advanced physical keyboards, sleeker designs, and slightly improved mobile internet capabilities, primarily for text-based browse. The design philosophy of these devices would evolve along a very different path. Instead of smooth, minimalist touchscreens, we would see intricate mechanical designs, perhaps with sophisticated haptic feedback for physical buttons, or highly specialized input methods tailored to specific tasks. Think about the pursuit of the ultimate physical keyboard on a BlackBerry, offering unmatched typing speed and accuracy for business professionals, or a Nokia with unprecedented battery life measured in weeks, not hours, allowing for extended travel without concern for recharging. These devices would be celebrated for their singular purpose and robust functionality, rather than their versatility. We would still live in a world where flip phones, slide phones, and devices with dozens of tiny buttons are the norm. These specialized devices would reach their technological peak in forms we can barely imagine today, perhaps a supercommunicator with a Pico projector for tiny presentations, a highly secure executive guardian for government officials featuring biometric security and an impenetrable messaging platform, or a music-focused phone with dedicated haptic controls and lossless audio for the audiophile. True device convergence never quite happens, each gadget remains specialized, fostering intense competition within niche segments. Imagine Nokia's Cine phone, a dedicated video playback device with a swiveling screen and robust speakers, perfect for watching downloaded movies on the go, perhaps boasting a small, integrated hard drive for storing vast media libraries. Motorola might release the Chameleon, a phone with swappable modules for different functions, like an enhanced camera lens for professional-grade photography with optical zoom, or a gaming joystick for dedicated mobile gaming experiences that rival handheld consoles of the mid-2000s. Consumers would often own multiple expensive gadgets to cover their digital needs, creating a more fragmented consumer electronics market where each device serves a distinct, optimized purpose. The idea of a single device handling everything would be seen as a compromise, rather than an ideal, leading to a consumer culture that valued specialized tools over generalized ones. This specialization would also slow down the pace of technological obsolescence. Instead of annual phone upgrades driven by new software features, improvements would be more incremental, focused on hardware durability and specific functional enhancements. Your supercommunicator from 2020 might still be perfectly adequate in 2025, receiving only minor hardware updates or firmware tweaks. This would create a less wasteful consumer culture, but also potentially a less dynamic innovation cycle across the broader electronics industry, as companies would focus on perfecting existing categories rather than pioneering entirely new ones. Without the iPhone's catalyst, the modern mobile application economy would not exist. No App Store, no Google Play. The fundamental infrastructure for widespread application distribution and monetization would be absent. Developers would lack universal platforms for millions of applications. Instead, software would be tied to specific hardware, requiring bespoke development for each phone model or operating system. This would create a highly fragmented and inefficient software ecosystem, limiting innovation and accessibility. The consumer experience would be characterized by limited choice and high cost, as developers would struggle to reach a wide audience with their niche software. Companies built entirely on mobile apps, like Uber, Instagram, or TikTok, would never emerge. This profoundly changes how we consume media, shop, travel, and interact with the world. Without the ease of app development and distribution, even established software companies would find it challenging to extend their reach to mobile users. Basic services like mapping would require standalone GPS devices or paper maps, as dynamic, real-time navigation apps would be impractical on limited mobile platforms. Without a widespread mobile app ecosystem, software development would remain siloed, often tied to desktop operating systems or specific hardware. Finding a train schedule would mean consulting a cumbersome desktop website, making a landline call, or checking a physical timetable. The entire concept of a gig economy, from freelance couriers to dog walkers, would be severely hampered without accessible mobile platforms, leading to different paths for entrepreneurship and more traditional employment structures. Businesses would rely more on physical presence, landline calls, and traditional marketing. This means fewer flexible work opportunities and a slower pace of innovation in service delivery. Small businesses might struggle to reach customers effectively, as localized app-based advertising and discovery platforms wouldn't exist. This absence would also shape the landscape of small business growth, favoring those with strong local ties and traditional marketing budgets, rather than innovative digital strategies. The barrier to entry for new service models would be significantly higher, and the rapid scaling of startups would be severely curtailed. Even basic customer service might rely more heavily on call centers and physical interactions. Social media, too, would look vastly different. Without omnipresent mobile cameras and constant connectivity, the explosion of visual platforms would be delayed or take a very different, text-based form. Facebook would remain primarily a desktop experience, focused on text updates, event planning, and photos laboriously uploaded from dedicated digital cameras. Its growth might plateau much earlier without mobile penetration, perhaps remaining a niche platform for connecting with existing friends rather than a global phenomenon. Instagram, as a visual-first platform built on immediate capture and sharing, would likely never gain traction or would exist as a niche web-based photo-sharing site, requiring dedicated digital cameras and home computers for sharing. TikTok's short-form video craze would be impossible without easy mobile video creation and consumption. Viral content might spread through email chains, specialized desktop forums, or even physical media like CDs. Social interaction would be less continuous, less visually driven, and more about deliberate check-ins from a computer. The selfie, as a global phenomenon, might not exist. Instead, photos would be more considered, less spontaneous, requiring more effort to share. Our collective cultural memory of events would be less immediate, less shared through user-generated content, and more reliant on traditional media reports, often with significant delays. This could mean a more curated, less immediate, but potentially more factual news environment, as information wouldn't go viral as easily. The implications for public discourse are significant. Without the instant feedback loops and echo chambers of modern social media, political and social movements might gain traction more slowly, relying more on traditional organizing and communication. Disinformation could still spread, but its velocity and reach would be significantly constrained, lacking the instant global amplification provided by mobile networks. Daily life would change profoundly. The constant urge to check notifications, endlessly scroll feeds, or capture every moment on video, these ubiquitous habits would be absent. People would likely have more sustained attention spans, leading to deeper engagement with single tasks or conversations. Connections would be more deliberate, less always on, reducing the incessant FOMO, fear of missing out. Individuals would likely pursue stronger personal hobbies unrelated to screens, shifting focus from digital consumption to real-world pursuits. Entertainment choices would be more intentional. Commutes might be spent reading physical books or engaging in direct conversation, rather than staring at a glowing screen. This absence of pervasive digital distraction would fundamentally alter individual cognitive patterns and social interactions. Public spaces would feel different. Fewer people looking down at screens, more engaging with their immediate environment or each other. The ambient hum of digital scrolling would be replaced by more direct human sounds, conversations, street noise, the rustle of newspapers. This might foster a greater sense of community and spontaneous interaction in public, as people are more inclined to look up and engage. Advertising would be less targeted, less personalized, relying on broad demographics and mass media, billboards, radio ads, print magazines. The mobile advertising industry simply wouldn't exist. This means advertisers would rely on different metrics and creative approaches, perhaps leading to more artistic or impactful mass media campaigns to capture attention in a less saturated visual environment. Privacy concerns would shift, focusing more on traditional forms of surveillance, CCTV cameras, government wiretaps, corporate data breaches from large, centralized desktop systems, rather than the continuous, granular data collection from our personal digital footprints. The very concept of a digital footprint would be far less encompassing, and debates around data ownership and algorithmic manipulation would be far less prominent. Public discourse might also be less polarized without the filter bubbles and echo chambers of modern social media, fostering a more nuanced and less emotionally charged public debate, possibly leading to more thoughtful public engagement with complex issues. Urban planning would prioritize physical infrastructure and connectivity over digital grids and smart city sensors. Oksana, a 35-year-old marketing specialist in Kiev, wakes to a sturdy, standalone digital alarm in 2025. She reaches for her Nokia Communicator 3.0, a familiar, reliable brick. No apps to check, no endless feeds to scroll. A pre-programmed news digest, delivered via slow GPRS, appears on the small screen, mostly text headlines. She reads about political developments, then closes the phone. Emails and social media are for her desktop. She might pick up a physical newspaper for in-depth analysis. Her connection to the world is deliberate and segmented. Her breakfast routine is unhurried, free from the urge to check notifications, allowing for a mindful start to her day. Her morning commute begins by pulling out a folded paper map of Kiev's metro. Real-time updates are unavailable, she relies on printed schedules and experience. On the metro, instead of glowing faces, Oksana sees passengers reading physical newspapers or paperback books, or simply lost in thought. The carriage hums with low murmurs and the rhythmic clatter of the train. This lack of digital distraction on public transport means more opportunities for observation, reflection, or even spontaneous conversation with fellow commuters. The journey itself becomes a more engaged, less isolated experience. At her office, Oksana works on a desktop computer. Communication with clients happens primarily through email and scheduled landline phone calls. Internal messages use a basic, text-only desktop chat client. Project collaboration involves shared network drives, physical documents, and frequent in-person meetings, where whiteboards are covered in handwritten notes and physical printouts are central to discussions. Sharing a complex document across the city means saving it to a USB and mailing it via courier, a reliable but time-consuming process. Remote work is rare, requiring a full laptop and stable home internet. The office environment emphasizes physical presence and direct interaction. Information flows at a slower, more deliberate pace, requiring more planning and less spontaneity. Lunch break is a deliberate affair. Oksana and colleagues walk to a nearby cafe, chosen by familiarity or recommendations. Conversations flow uninterrupted. To order food for delivery, she'd find the cafe's number in a printed directory and call directly. The expectation of diverse options from hundreds of restaurants and quick, track deliveries simply doesn't exist. This absence limits the dynamism of the food service industry, favoring established eateries and slower expansion, keeping food choices more localized and traditional. To check her bank balance in the afternoon, Oksana opens her desktop browser, logging in with a physical token or a complex, multi-step password. Online banking exists, but it's clunky, transfers often take hours. Paying utility bills means physically going to a bank branch or post office, which can involve waiting in long queues. Financial tracking is done with pen and paper or complex spreadsheets, demanding more discipline and manual effort in managing personal finances. Cash and physical card terminals remain dominant. Merchants rely on traditional POS systems, making every transaction a more deliberate act. After work, Oksana heads to a friend's birthday. Her friend texted detailed directions earlier in the week. No Google Maps. If she gets lost, she'll ask a passerby for directions or find a public internet cafe. These cafes, still common, offer desktop computers for hourly use, becoming community hubs for communication and information access. The journey itself becomes an act of navigation, observation, and human interaction. At the party, people are fully engaged. To capture a memory, a friend pulls out a dedicated digital camera. Photos are shared later, uploaded to a home computer, emailed, or printed for albums. There's no pressure to document every moment for an unseen audience, allowing for more authentic enjoyment. The idea of live streaming an event is a fantasy. The absence of instant sharing fosters deeper, more genuine connections among guests, free from the performative aspect of online presence. Conversations flow naturally, without constant digital interruptions. Later, Oksana unwinds with music from her dedicated MP3 player. She might rent a movie from a local video store or watch a DVD at home. Entertainment consumption is a more fixed, intentional activity, often shared with family or friends in a physical space, making it a communal experience. Before bed, Oksana might write a long email to her sister in Canada. International calls are expensive, so they schedule deliberate phone calls. For daily updates, they rely on lengthy emails, sharing photos uploaded from their cameras. The constant, easy back and forth of modern messaging apps is absent, making long-distance relationships more intentional and cherished. In Ukraine, the impact is particularly acute. The digital transformation championed by the government, leading to services like Daya, would be impossible. Accessing digital IDs, paying taxes, or getting government services would require cumbersome desktop interfaces and physical paperwork. Mobile banking applications are absent, forcing reliance on bank branches or less convenient desktop platforms. Cash and physical card payments remain dominant, slowing commerce and financial inclusion. The adoption of new financial technologies would be significantly behind, isolating Ukraine from global fintech trends and limiting access to credit and other financial services. The concept of a digital society would remain largely theoretical, hindering government efficiency and citizen access to essential services, potentially impacting economic development and public trust. Bureaucracy would be slower, and transparency more limited, relying on traditional oversight mechanisms. In times of crisis like the ongoing full-scale war, the lack of smartphones would be devastating. Spontaneous citizen journalism, real-time reporting of atrocities, and the ability to confirm ground realities from multiple sources, much of this would be lost. Information would be heavily filtered through traditional media, often with significant delays. Air raid alerts would rely on traditional sirens and radio broadcasts, providing less granular and less immediate information. There would be no instant push notifications to personal devices, only general public announcements. Connecting with family in bomb shelters or active combat zones would be incredibly difficult, fostering greater anxiety and uncertainty due to limited, unreliable communication channels. Global dissemination of information and pleas for support would be slower, more mediated, and less impactful without the direct, viral spread that portable devices enable. This could significantly alter international perception and response times, affecting aid delivery and making humanitarian efforts far more challenging. Volunteer networks and aid coordination within Ukraine would be far more complex, relying on landlines, dedicated radio systems, or physical messengers for communication and logistics, severely hampering efficiency. The war effort itself would be profoundly different, lacking the instant coordination, drone footage, and public awareness campaigns that modern mobile technology facilitates, potentially leading to more drawn-out conflicts and greater human cost and suffering. The absence of the iPhone would undeniably mean we'd miss out on countless innovations and conveniences that have propelled society forward. Entire industries and job categories we now rely upon would simply not exist, and many problems we currently solve with an app would persist or require more arduous solutions. But we also might have sidestepped some of the widely discussed negative consequences of hyperconnectivity, digital addiction, constant distraction, pervasive data collection and privacy erosion, the rapid spread of misinformation and disinformation, and the mental health challenges often associated with constant social media comparison and curated online personas. The pressure to constantly perform and present a perfect self would be lessened. The echoes of that single flop would resonate through every aspect of life in 2025, defining a truly alternate reality. Without mobile apps, the way we consume music, movies, and games would be drastically different. Streaming services like Spotify and Netflix, built on mobile accessibility, wouldn't exist in their current forms. Music distribution would largely revert to physical CDs or digital downloads to desktop computers, often requiring manual syncing to dedicated MP3 players. The thrill of discovering new artists through personalized algorithmic recommendations on a smartphone would be replaced by radio play, music magazines, and word of mouth. Film consumption would be dominated by traditional cinema, DVD/Blu-ray rentals and purchases, and scheduled television broadcasts. The explosion of independent filmmaking and short-form content facilitated by mobile cameras and distribution platforms like YouTube and Vimeo would be severely curtailed. Gaming would remain primarily console and PC-based, with the casual mobile gaming market, a multi-billion-dollar industry today, being non-existent. This means no Candy Crush, no Angry Birds, no Pokemon Go. Game developers would focus on higher-budget, less accessible titles, limiting the breadth of gaming experiences and the demographic reach of the industry. The very concept of on-demand entertainment, a cornerstone of modern life, would be significantly diminished. The shift in urban infrastructure would also be profound. Without the demand for ubiquitous mobile connectivity, cities would evolve differently. While Wi-Fi hotspots would exist, they wouldn't be as prevalent or integrated into public spaces. Smart city initiatives, relying heavily on network sensors and mobile data for everything from traffic management to waste collection, would be largely absent. Public transportation systems might lack real-time tracking apps, relying instead on static timetables and physical displays. The urban landscape would be less dotted with charging stations, and more reliance would be placed on fixed public telephones and internet cafes. This could lead to a less efficient, but perhaps more physically grounded, urban experience. Navigation would be more reliant on physical maps, landmark recognition, and asking for directions, fostering a different kind of urban exploration and a greater reliance on local knowledge. Furthermore, the global economy would be significantly impacted. The immense wealth generated by the mobile app industry, from software development to advertising, e-commerce, and logistics, would simply not exist. This economic void would be filled by other sectors, but it's unlikely that any single sector would achieve the same scale of rapid, global growth. Emerging markets, which have often leapfrogged traditional infrastructure to embrace mobile technology, would face a much slower pace of digital development. Financial inclusion, driven by mobile banking and payment solutions, would be far more challenging, keeping a larger portion of the global population unbanked or underserved. Cross-border trade and communication would also be slower and more cumbersome, relying on traditional banking systems and less efficient communication methods. The absence of easily accessible mobile payment systems would mean cash and traditional credit cards remain king, slowing down transaction speeds and potentially impacting financial innovation. Consider the domain of health and wellness. Mobile health apps, wearable fitness trackers that sync with smartphones, and telehealth platforms would be rudimentary or non-existent. People would rely more on physical logs for exercise, direct visits to doctors for consultations, and traditional medical records. The personalization and immediate feedback offered by mobile health tools would be absent. This could mean a less data-driven approach to personal health management and a slower adoption of preventive healthcare measures. Research in fields like epidemiology might also be hampered without the vast, anonymous data streams generated by mobile devices, limiting our ability to track and respond to public health trends in real time. Finally, the very nature of human connection would be reevaluated. While a world without constant digital distraction might foster deeper in-person interactions, it would also make maintaining long-distance relationships more challenging. The spontaneous video calls, shared photos, and continuous messaging that define modern distant relationships would be replaced by scheduled landline calls, infrequent emails, and physical letters. This could lead to a more deliberate, but less frequent, form of connection. The immediate sense of global community fostered by shared digital experiences, from viral news to international social movements, would be attenuated. Information would travel slower, and global events might feel more distant and abstract. The interconnectedness we experience today, for better or worse, is inextricably linked to the ubiquity of the smartphone. Its absence would not merely alter technology, it would fundamentally reshape human society, culture, and our very experience of being in the world.